friends, my name is Kelly Gordon and I work for the Carroll County Public Library's Outreach Department. I hope you had a chance to enjoy my online story time, All the Lovely Children. It was really fun to think about ways to use songs and books and crafts to celebrate the beautiful diversity of each unique child and to celebrate how special they are. And one of the ways that I like doing that is with a song that you might have learned when you were young, the way I did. And you may have learned the words as, "He's got the whole world in his hands." That's the way I learned it when I was younger. And here is a picture book version of that song, illustrated by Kadir Nelson. And I just love this radiant, glowing face of this young man on the cover of this book. And as it goes through, he celebrates all the special things in the world around him. But in the story time that I shared online, I used a slightly different version of that song. The words were changed to, "We've got the whole world in our hands." And I really love that twist on the lyrics. This book is illustrated by Rafael Lopez, and it is available through the Carroll County Public Library catalog. And we do have contactless pickup now, so you could request this book and come in and pick this up. And in this book, the focus is shifted to how each of us has responsibility to help care for each other and care for the world that we live in. So I have an idea for a craft that you might want to try with the little people in your life. And it has a few steps to it. So this might be something, especially if you're working with really young children, that you'd want to do over the course of a few days, depending on their attention span. But I'm starting out with a large piece of white foam core board. But you certainly could use poster board. In fact, I think it would be easier with poster board, but I didn't happen to have that available to me right now. And then I'm going to use a simple crayon from my box of multicultural crayons, which is important to have art supplies available to young children that reflect themselves. So I'm going to use a big pot lid to trace a circle onto the center of my paper. And any large circle shape will do, as long as you get a circle on there. That's all you need. And so you can see we have our circle, big white circle. Now we're going to keep these intact. We're not going to cut the circle out all the way, but what we're going to do with a little cutting board underneath is we're going to cut some slits along the circle, and each slit will be about the width of a child's wrist, so about 2.5 inches or so. This is obviously the grown-up part of the project. I'm going to use a box cutter for this, and I'm just going to trace part of that circle for about 2.5 inches, and then leave some space, and do it again, and I'm going to go all the way around the circle, cutting my slits. Okay, so we've gone all the way around, cutting these slits, leaving about 1.5 inches, 2 inches in between each one, so that the circle, which will become the earth, does not completely cut and separate from the board. And now comes the fun and messy part. This is something that a lot of children love to do. That you occasionally have some children with sensory issues that might find this problematic, but a lot of kids love to get messy with paint, and it's a fun process art project. So we're going to start with each child painting one hand blue. If you think of the earth as blue and green, you can think of the Raffi song about blue and green earth. Oh, it feels so fun. It's nice and cool too on a hot day. This could be a fun project to do outdoors, where it doesn't matter if you spill a little paint on the grass, and then you could just wear your bathing suits and you could hose off when you're finished. So we're going to make some handprints on our globe. And we can do that with blue on one hand. And if you had a group of children, maybe each child would do one blue and one green, just so everybody gets a turn. Now I'm going to get really messy because I'm going to just put green paint right over top for this, since I only have two hands. Obviously, if you were painting a child, you could paint one hand blue and one hand green. And then these can overlap. They can go in different directions. It's not supposed to be a factual representation of the earth. It's just giving the idea of the blue and green of our beautiful planet. And maybe your youngest kids would want to start smearing and finger painting. You could have a lot of fun with this. You could mix the two colors on the same hand. However, you know, there's no real rules in process art. You just have fun. And if you don't get messy, you're not having enough fun. So, all right, so there's my earth. I kind of loosely, as much as possible, want to stay inside the circle with the paint, like that. And now, obviously, before we can do the next phase with this, we need to let the paint dry. So hold that thought, and while it's drying, we'll do the next part. So for all this area around the outside of the earth, we're going to take that same blue paint that we used before and add some white and mix it together. Kids love mixing colors, and you can talk about that and experiment with it. The more white that I add, the lighter blue it becomes, and how does it change? Does it look the same or different? All those kinds of fun conversations you can have while you're doing it and get the kids involved in that process. So now we get to paint our hands again. This time we're painting them with sky blue, everybody's favorite snowball flavor. It feels so nice and cool. And then we're going to just make handprints out here in the outside to create our background for our poster. So we can just put handprints all around the outside. And you can see I'm working at my dining room table today to do this, and I have a plastic shower curtain as my drop cloth, but you can use all kinds of different cloths or old sheets, things like that to cover your space up if you're working indoors and you want to keep from getting a big mess. But again, it's kind of fun to make a mess. Almost finished. I think one more set will do it. And by the time you have this many handprints on your design, you can see that it gives a chance for a lot of children to take part and participate, and everybody can get a chance to put at least one, even in a large class, which nobody seems to be working with great big large classes these days, but if you had a large group, you could still have everyone have a turn. Okay, I think we're all filled up. So now we have our beautiful earth in a sky blue sky. And now we'll let that dry some more while we work on the next part of our project. Okay, so now while our paint is drying in the other part of our project, we're going to work on this part. So what we're going to be doing is making a series of handprints that include the forearm of all the children in your group. And if you only had one child that you were doing this with, they can just make many. But you're going to be tracing and cutting out their hand and forearm. And again, I'm using a package of multicultural construction paper, which is another great ingredient to have in your recipe for crafts in your classroom or your center. And I'm going to use my crayon, just tracing. You guys have done this with kids lots of times, just tracing out the hand shape. With the kids will giggle and say it tickles. And just tracing their hands and then cutting those out with scissors. If the children are old enough to practice their scissor skills, they don't need to be perfect again, so you could let them do that, but if they need a little help with that part, you could certainly help them. And then I looked through old magazines. I also looked online and got some pictures of different things in the world. And you certainly would want to solicit ideas from the children. What are some of the things in the world that you love, that you want to help take care of, that you want to celebrate? And so I have pictures of all kinds of different things. Here's the moon and the stars, and the sun and the clouds. But I have pictures of farmers and their animals, of grandma and grandpa, of mountains and lakes, of moms and dads, etc., etc. So I've cut out a whole bunch of those in advance, and then just simply used my glue stick to paste one image onto the palm of each hand after they're cut out. And so that way we're going to be able to talk about all the things in the world that we have in our hands, literally having them pasted into the palms of our hand. Okay, so all our beautiful hand pins have dried. The glue on our cutout hands have dried, and so now we're going to just take one of our hands, slide it through the slit, and then when you flip it over, you can use a glue stick or a little bit of tape or Elmer's glue, whatever you want, and you're going to just fasten that hand, it's really the wrist, down onto the back of the poster, and now you get a little bit of a 3D effect of the hand coming from the earth. Now, as you go around and add more of these, if you find that you need to fasten these down, you can do that too with a little more glue or tape, just so that they don't flop in towards the center. So I'll pause there, and then I'll show you the finished product. So once you're finished inserting all the hands into your slots and gluing them down, this is what your finished, something like this would be what your finished project would look like. And you have your beautiful earth in the center. There's really no up or down or right or wrong about this. It could turn in any direction. But then when you wanted to sing the song with the children, you could go through the verses. We've got all the yummy food in our hands. We've got all the yummy food in our hands. We've got the doctors and the nurses in our hands. We've got the whole world in our hands. And the children might have fun as they get to pick which one, point to one of the hands to sing the verse that's the hand they chose to add to the artwork. That can really feel some ownership about creating their own version of this popular children's song. So have lots of fun and have a great summer. Thanks for joining me.